A child doesn't know their potential. It's up to us as educators to help them realize education is about access and opportunity for advancement in our modern society. What is your role in education?
I'm a communication systems engineer.
I'm a secretary.
I'm a school nurse.
I'm a guidance counselor.
I'm a facilities manager.
I'm a science teacher.
I'm an ESL teacher.
I'm a vice principal.
I am a student.
I am an assistant superintendent.
This is the Family of Global Educators podcast. Join us as we discuss contemporary issues in education, from policy to practice, from learning to leadership, and beyond. Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Salvatore, your superintendent of schools here in Long Branch, and I'm here with Elisa Aquino, my personnel manager.
Hello, everyone.
We are going to go through two alerts, Alert 215 and 216 for policies in the Long Branch Public Schools. And it sounds like just two items, but in fact, there are several policies and regulations outlined for revision and update that are approved. So why don't we start off with the first one, P&R 1550. Go ahead, Elisa. What's that one?
It's Equal Employment Anti-Discrimination Practices. So this is our affirmative action policy. It's been updated basically now to say that if you have any conflict with your immediate supervisor, you could proceed directly to the affirmative action officer. However, if you do find conflict with the affirmative action officer, then you can put in writing to the superintendent, who will designate a supervisor or an administrative staff member to conduct an investigation.
Okay, so there's, it's not called affirmative action anymore. That's what I'm hearing. All right, so it's not affirmative action anymore, but I know there's specific guidelines to follow that are time sensitive. What does that mean? Right
now, the biggest change we had is that at the school level for an investigation, you now have 10 business days instead of 30 business days.
All right, so if somebody approaches an immediate supervisor at a department or a building and says that they feel they've been discriminated against, that person, that supervisor or building principal has the authority and must investigate within 10 business days. My recommendation is give us a call over here to help guide you through that process. If, in fact, the principal or supervisor is the person being alleged to be discriminatory, then that person has the right to go right to the affirmative action officer, which then has to conduct an investigation in 7 days.
Correct.
Okay. So a lot of changes there. What do we have next?
All has to do with the athletic department.
All right, policy 2431, athletic competition.
And also regulation 2431.2 and policy 2431.8. This basically is telling you that you need to hand out a cardiac arrest pamphlet and an opioid fact sheet. It tells you how to distribute these fact sheets. And it also discusses how you need signed acknowledgement from all student athletes and cheerleaders before the first start of practices that they acknowledge these pamphlets.
You know, so there's a lot of stories about opioid abuse, not just in Monmouth County, but throughout New Jersey, throughout the Northeast. And it is truly an epidemic. Right in the city here, we've got an opioid task force now that's emerged. And there are so many issues around prescription drugs used for pain medication and care coordination. So this is a toolkit for athletes and their families, people who are likely to use prescription pain meds because of injuries. And it teaches them basic facts around opioids to just raise their awareness of how powerful and potent these dangerous drugs are.
Also in policy 2431, they talk about how students now have the opportunity to earn a varsity letter if they participate in any kind of competitive activity other than athletics. So basically debate.
Band. Right? What else? Choir. So any interscholastic extracurricular activity. So to our folks over at the high school, let's make sure we're leading this. So we're not just waiting for kids to ask for a varsity letter. Let's talk to all of our club advisors who are in charge of interscholastic extracurricular activities and make sure that we are respecting them with varsity letters as outlined in this policy. What else? Another important topic coming up, student suicide prevention, policy 5,350. That's been revised, and the regulation has been revised as well.
The biggest change with this is that you don't have to report to the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services anymore. You could report directly to DCF any attempted or completed youth suicide. They also discuss warning signs of suicide, how parents need to be immediately notified. Parents need to arrange for medical and psychiatric services if needed, and that there's a medical clearance that needs to be provided before a student returns to school.
Now, these may be revisions to the policies and regulations, but these are common practices and protocols we are following in our schools every day. Sending students out for medical or psychiatric screening, asking that they be cleared before they come back to school. Unfortunately, this has become commonplace, and we are seeing a rise in our numbers of kids expressing ideation of suicide. So this is a real concern we have here, equal to that of the opioid epidemic going on in our country. Okay, the next one is the report of potentially missing or abused children.
That actually is 8462 policy, and it's been updated to coincide with Regulation and Policy 5350 of the reporting to DCF instead of the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services.
Okay, very good. Next one is another student policy. Whenever you see a 5 in the front of a policy, that's typically going to be student related, not staff related. So policy 5533, student smoking. Everybody knows kids don't smoke anymore. They've got new ways of smoking. You're seeing it on trains, in the street, and unfortunately, we're seeing it in schools too. We affectionately refer to it as vaping or juuling, and we are seeing a rise of it, not only in our schools, but in schools throughout the country. So what does this policy state?
That anybody under the age of 21 who has this in their possession on any kind of school grounds in the school building at a school-sponsor event, they can be confiscated. If it appears to the school staff member that the student may be currently under the influence or that the confiscated item might have a drug in it, the principal or designee can require that student to receive immediate medical examinations.
We've have numerous incidences that occur throughout the past few months at our high school. I mean, first of all, let's just start. You have to be 21 years old to buy a tobacco product or electronic cigarette. I actually didn't know that. 21. So in stating that, you have to realize that any child in school in possession of a tobacco product has violated the law. The law states you cannot purchase it if you're not 21 years of age. So that means every student that we have under the age of 21, it's illegal for them to purchase. So if you see them with an illegal item in school, you have every right. You have every right to be suspicious. You have every right to send them for medical screening. We just had this occur the other day. We had a student, a high school age student, enter the classroom, and the teacher noticed an electronic cigarette or a vaping device. And this teacher did really a great job following protocols. The teacher went, noticed it, didn't confront the student, went to their email, their work email, sent an email out to the SAC, and the SAC then sent somebody down, and then the student actually handed the device over, and we sent the student out for medical screening. Unfortunately, this is the new high school that we're in, right? This is the day and age where kids are in possession of items and of illegal substances that can not only get them in trouble in school, but can also get them in trouble with the law as well, especially if it's an illegal substance, not just tobacco. We're talking about kids are now throughout our country. They're using cannabis oil. They're lacing different oils and flavors, and they are experimenting similar to a chemist, but they're doing it with their own body and inhaling insane toxins. So that's student smoking. Those policies and procedures. Policies are updated, but the procedures are changing a little bit, so just make sure you pay attention to that. Okay, under 5535, passive breath alcohol sensor devices, and we don't typically use a lot of passive breathalyzers in our schools, right?
I know that's something that we do maybe for the prom. And it just basically talks about how to randomly screen the students It provides guidelines for timing and location of screening, and it also includes that there's a written notice that has to be posted at the location if you are going to go on and proceed with this screening.
Right. So the great example is the one you gave of the prom. Every year we inform our student population that, listen, we are going to be randomly selecting students and you have to undergo a breathalyzer in coming into the prom. You know that ahead of time. So if you make the decision to drink alcohol or we even suspect that you are under the influence, then unfortunately you're going to have to take a breathalyzer. And there are guidelines on how you would do random selection. And I will tell you this, every year, 99% of the kids have a great time at our events. But there's always one kid who tests the limit and gets in trouble with it. So what's next?
Regulation 3216 and 4216, which is dress code and grooming for teaching and support staff members.
This is a great one. This is something that we've been talking about for 20 years. I don't know why we never revised it in policy. It was something that was discussed, even informally agreed upon. And it just makes so much sense that our staff members in our early childhood centers, that they're able to wear rubber-soled sneakers. We're saying that they're dark so that it's not so obvious, like they're wearing some old school white New Balance or something. We're saying some darker sneakers so they kind of blend in with their outfit so that they're not wearing 6-inch heels on a rubber playground or chasing 3-year-olds around the school or doing gross motor activity. It makes a ton of sense. It actually helps us on a number of fronts, not just with engagement, but also with workers' compensation. We've had so many people over the years fall because of a result of their shoes or their traction. So, I know this is, for every person that's happy that sneakers are able to be worn, there's other people who just don't like wearing sneakers to work. So this is really to benefit everybody, not necessarily what you like or what your fashion is. This is really just to benefit our students and overall our school. Okay, what's next?
Alert 216 now.
216. On to the second one, and we're cruising today.
Yes, and it's policy and regulation 1613, something new. Disclosure of review of applicants' employment history, also known as pass the trash.
Pass the trash. We love this one. Okay, terrible name for a policy and regulation, but it is what it is. Pass the trash. Why? They do not want us passing people from district to district that have a history of substantiated abuse, whether it be physical or sexual abuse. And it's actually made headlines throughout the country where students have been abused by a particular teacher, and that teacher has resurfaced in another school district, either locally or in the next state, the next county. So this is a reaction to those headlines. Unfortunately, all of the details within this policy and regulation are very difficult to follow. So tell me a little bit about why it's so difficult to follow some of these areas of this policy.
Well, we basically have to go into an employee's employment history for the past 20 years if they had any contact with students.
20 years. What if you just came out of college and you worked at Roy Rogers throughout high school? What would you have to call Roy Rogers?
No.
Okay, so what is their employment history then?
Employment history is anybody in contact with students. So substitute teaching, if you worked a camp with kids, if you worked any after-school programs.
Okay, so
while you were a college student.
All right, now, so that makes a little bit of sense. A student comes out of college, they're now working to be a professional, and you really don't have to do a thorough vetting because they've never really had any real work experience. But what about last year? An example is we hired a number of teachers, and some of them had 25 years experience, maybe 18 years experience, especially specialists like chemistry or special ed math. And some of them were in 7 or 8 different districts, maybe 2 different counties, maybe even different states. What do you do then?
We have to reach out to their human resource department, and we look into them filling out a form that basically tells us that they don't acknowledge any history of child abuse or sexual misconduct, and they send it back to us. they have 20 days to get us the information too.
Wow. So what if they don't get it to us in 20 days?
We do have 90 days to keep them employed on a provisional basis, but after those 90 days, if we still don't receive that information, we do have, we can terminate employment.
Wow. So what does that mean for us? Do we have other districts reaching out to us trying to get information to find this out?
On a daily basis. So that means that we have to get that information back to the districts within 20 days too, or they could possibly terminate that employee too, which would really come back on us as well.
Sure. Actually, I mean, you can imagine if you were trying to gain employment in another district and you were prevented from getting a job because your previous district didn't respond. I mean, we would open ourselves up to litigation easily. So I guess it's a very complex process, very tedious, sounds like a lot of work, but very important because people should not be passed around who are bad for kids. All right, the next one, we have back into the 5,000s again, which means students, if you remember that. So policy and regulation 5512, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, nothing new to our schools. Tell me a little bit about this revision.
The updates is that you can report anonymously now, and that it talked about taking into consideration any disabilities and how consequences should coincide with any students who do have disabilities. It talks about parents can request a hearing through the board secretary no later than 60 days after written documentation has been provided to them. It also discusses that we will have to hold a meeting within 10 business days of the request by the parent.
Okay, so my advice to all of you in schools, especially principals and vice principals who are dealing with bullying investigations or harassment and intimidation and bullying investigations, is that to make that recommendation, if a parent feels like justice didn't prevail, then have them reach out to our student service coordinator, and then that would be a pathway to our board secretary. Moving on, we have policy regulation 5,561. Again, for students, it's the use of physical restraint and seclusion techniques for children with disabilities. This one is filled with lots of information. So can you give me a summary?
Basically, it gives you the definition of restraint, seclusion techniques. It talks about how it applies to students with disabilities, how each physical restraint has to be documented in writing, how parents need to be immediately notified when any child is physically restrained, and they have to receive full written report within 48 hours of the incident.
Now, we talked a little bit about this because we thought there was, I was really looking into the details of the screening after somebody's restrained. And we said we thought there was something there about a nurse would have to screen. And we didn't see it in this policy alert. But I will say this, just as a precautionary method, if somebody must be restrained because they are a danger to themselves or somebody else, and that is your last case resort, my recommendation is to make sure the nurse screens them afterwards. You can include that in the report. A report is, this policy mandates that a written report is finalized and provided to the parents within 48 hours. So reaching out and with a phone call afterwards is kind of common practice, but also having a summary of the report. And if you can state in there at the end that the nurse screened, that actually is probably really important for all parties involved.
The regulation actually goes into details of what should be in the report.
Great. Okay, so if you want more information on that, please take a look. I know that this topic of restraint in schools is something that people have been talking about for a while, especially with children who are a danger to themselves or other people. And it sounds like an easy thing, especially when working with young children. Okay, if they're not in control of themselves, then to restrain them. I will tell you, we've had more staff members injured or put in a predicament where their professional judgment has been questioned. I will say, attempt to avoid restraint, especially if you're not trained. Attempt to avoid at all costs. And in the event that you have to intervene, try to have another adult in the room. Or request some assistance from other professionals in the building. It helps you out. It helps staff members out in the long run, and certainly will help protect the child as well. All right, moving on into policy 8,561, the procurement procedures for school nutrition programs. What do we have here?
Not a lot of updates here. What they did is they aligned their procedures with the NJDOA and their requirements.
Great. This is a hot topic. So you talk about school nutrition. This is, it's making headlines all over the country. New York Times has picked it up, LA Times, because of what children are eating in schools. If there's an obesity crisis in America, we can't blame it all on stress and anxiety. It's got to be the intake and the exercise levels too. So schools, you start seeing more and more laws and policies. We all are seeing them around getting kids fit, raising their awareness of what they're putting in their body. The opioid policy is a classic example. Also of the impact of calories and nutrition, and our menu, our daily menu. We were looking at recently some of the obesity rates just in our community here. And when you're looking at specific populations, what do you see? You see cultures of fast food, obesity, you see cultures of quick and easy, and that's part of this generation that we've got to change. And schools have to aid in that. If we are serving, I guess, nearly 8,000 meals a day between breakfast and lunch, then we have to make sure that our children are putting the right things in their body. So this is going to be a conversation that just doesn't start and stop here. This is going to be a conversation that's going to occur not just in our school, but schools throughout the country, probably for the next decade. And last but not least, right, this is student dress code. Remember Regulation 5,511. We have some changes here, Lisa. What do we have?
So right now for pre-K through 5th grade, we now are allowing pants to have pockets on the sides.
Perfect, because they're not in style anymore anyway, so nobody cares, right?
Right.
Okay, no, pockets can be on the side of pants, all right.
And that shorts do not only have to be worn from November 1st through March 31st anymore.
Right, if you're crazy enough to wear shorts in the winter, then you can wear them, okay?
Grades 6 through 12, warm-up jackets and sweatshirts are permitted as one's daily attire as long as they follow the uniformity of dress code color scheme.
Okay, so that's exclusive to 6 through 12.
Spandex, leggings, or yoga-style clothing is not permitted unless shorts or skirts that follow the uniformity of dress color scheme are worn over them.
So if I'm wearing black leggings, I would have to wear a skirt over that, or I would have to wear black shorts or something over that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. If I'm in grades middle school through high school.
Yeah.
So the other stuff about having fingertip length of skirts, does that still apply?
Yes. And they see-through tops with the holes. We talked about the holes not being above fingertip length as well. So any holes in pants can't be above those fingertips.
Oh, okay, because it's pretty popular now that jeans will be torn or ripped. So this policy states that those rips are okay if they're below the fingertip. All right, not easy to enforce, but that is actually a big change. And there were other conversations about patches, right?
Yeah, patches are not required.
So at any levels?
Any level.
All right, so you know those patches that if you would bleach that white shirt, they would turn yellow and they would get crinkled up. We no longer are requiring that children pre-K through 12 have to wear patches. Great. What else do we have?
A long branch spirit wear is permissible. They just have to follow any color scheme that's mentioned to them, and it has to be related to the theme approved by the building administrator.
Okay, so if we are having lighted up blue for autism and the school wants to coordinate a day where everybody wears blue, what do kids wear then?
They get to wear their blue shirts.
All right, they get to wear a blue shirt. What about if it changes the next week to breast cancer awareness and it's a pink out?
They will be able to wear that as well.
Okay, so does it have to state, does it have to have a school logo on there? Does it have to state that it's Long Branch Spirit Wear?
No.
Okay.
As long as it is approved by the building administrator and that's the theme, then they can wear that theme color.
Pretty easy to follow. Okay. And it looks like for first offense from somebody violating it, right out in the regs, it talks about contacting parents to figure out what's going on. And the second offense, if so be it, then it would be a loss of privileges or detention would be provided, right?
Yes.
All right, that's basically all we have today. Those are our updates, 215, 216. Thank you from our office to your schools, and have a great day, everybody.